Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Semester 5 students, today the topic that we are going to study is page number 216. To mean or not to mean. Up to mean means what you actually mean, जो आप कहना चाहते या जो आप नहीं कहना चाहते. For all a rhetorician's rules teach nothing but no name his tools. You have to teach, you have to tell, you have to communicate what you mean to say. The meaning of an expression is not always obvious. कोई भी expression उसका meaning जो है वो obvious नहीं होता. Even to a native speaker of the language, even to the person who owns that language, there are many ways in which meanings may be obscured. So there are different means which are adopted to communicate your meaning, or at least require some imagination or special knowledge to be apprehended, or you need to have grasp over that language. Poets, pundits, and yes, even professors can be difficult to understand. So different people might be hard to be understood. We would like to examine three ways in which meaning may be veiled or even absent. They are anomaly, three ways to communicate your meaning. First one, anomaly. Now what is anomaly? Expressions that appear to follow the rules of syntax but go awry semantically, which are semantically not confounding the syntactic rules. Second one, metaphor. Or non-literal, indirect but often creative meaning. And idioms. The third one is idioms. Anomaly, metaphor, idioms, wherein the meaning of an expression is unrelated to the meaning of its parts, though it is conventionally understood. अब idiom में क्या होता है कि वो जो कह रहे होते हैं वो मीनिंग असल में नहीं होता, बल्कि उसके बिटवीन द लाइंस कोई मीनिंग होता है. अनोमली क्या होती है? अनोमली, ही सेज, नो सेंस एंड नॉन सेंस. Any expression that makes no sense or can be termed as nonsense. Don't tell me a man's being able to talk sense. Everyone can talk sense. Can he talk nonsense? William Pitt says every person can talk sense. Every person can be understood. But is there any person who can talk nonsense as well? Leigh Hunt says there is no greater mistake in the world than the looking upon every sort of nonsense as want of sense. कि इससे ज़्यादा बड़ी मिस्टेक कोई नहीं है कि आप नॉनसेंस में से सेंस निकाल रहे हैं. If in a conversation someone said to you, "My brother is an only child," you might think that he was making a joke or that he did not know the meaning of the words he was using. You would know that the sentence was strange or anomalous, yet it is certainly an English sentence. It conforms to all the syntactic rules of the language. It is strange because it represents a contradiction. The meaning of brother includes the fact that the individual referred to is a male human who has at least one sibling and cannot sensibly be an only child. The sentence that bachelor is pregnant is anomalous for similar reasons. The word bachelor contains the semantic property male, whereas the word pregnant has the semantic property female. This clash of semantic properties makes the sentence anomalous. The anomaly arises from trying to equate something that is male with something that is female. The semantic properties of words determine what other words they can be combined with. A sentence widely used by linguists that we encountered in chapter 4 illustrates this fact. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. हमने ये सेंटेंस पढ़ा था. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Now it is a strange sentence. Why? It is colorless but green. Green ideas. How can ideas be of some color? Sleep. How ideas sleep? And they sleep furiously. What does this term mean? The sentence obeys all the syntactic rules of English, obviously. The subject is colorless green ideas and the predicate is sleep furiously. It has the same syntactic structure as the sentence. Dark green leaves rustle furiously. But there is obviously something wrong semantically with the sentence. The meaning of colorless includes the semantic property without color, but it is combined with the adjective green, which has the property green in color. How can something be both without color and green in color? Contradiction hai. Other such semantic violations also occur in the sentence. Other English sentences make no sense at all because they include words that have no meaning. They are uninterpretable. They can be interpreted only if some meaning for each nonsense word can be dreamt up. Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky is probably the most famous poem in which most of the content words have no meaning. They do not exist in the lexicon of the grammar. Still, all the sentences sound as if they should be or could be English sentences. It was brilliant, and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome rats outgrave. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the menzome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree and stood a while in thought. Now most of the words here, they are ambiguous, having no meaning. But since it is a poem and rhyming, therefore we are confused. Without knowing what vorpal means, you nevertheless know that he took his vorpal sword in hand. The words don't exist in the language. Means the same thing as he took his sword, which was vorpal, in hand. It was in his hand that he took his vorpal sword. Knowing the language and assuming that vorpal means the same thing in the three sentences, because the same sounds are used, you can decide that the truth conditions of the three sentences are identical. In other words, you are able to decide that two things mean the same thing, even though you do not know what either one means. You decide by assuming that the semantic properties of vorpal are the same whenever it is used. We now see why Alice commented when she had read Jabberwocky. अब Alice ने क्या comment किया था? It seems very pretty, but it's rather hard to understand. You see, she didn't like to confess, even to herself, that she couldn't make it out at all. Somehow it seems to fill my head with ideas. Only I don't exactly know what they are. However, somebody killed something. That's clear at any rate. So the message has been communicated, though the words are making no sense or have no meaning at all. You have to guess. A wild guess you have to make in order to understand what the word vorpal means. The activity, the action in that whole poem is, she says, Alice, that something has been killed by something. Or somebody killed something. The semantic properties of words show up in other ways in sentence construction. For example, if the meaning of a word includes the semantic property human in English, we can replace it by one sort of pronoun but not another. This semantic feature determines that we call a boy he and a table it, and not vice versa. According to Mark Twain, Eve had such knowledge in her grammar, for she writes in her diary, if this reptile is a man, it ain't an it, is it? That wouldn't be grammatical, would it? I think it would be he. In that case, one would parse it thus: nominative he, dative him, possessive his. Semantic violations in poetry may form strange but interesting aesthetic images, as in Dylan Thomas' phrase, a grief ago. Ago is ordinarily used with words specified by some temporal semantic feature. A week ago, an hour ago, a month ago, a century ago, but not a table ago, a dream ago, a mother ago. When Thomas used the word grief with ago, he was adding a durational feature to grief for poetic effect. In the poetry of Cummings, there are phrases like, the six subjunctive crumbs twitch, a man wearing a round jeer for a hat, children building this rain man out of snow. Though all of these phrases violate some semantic rules, we can understand them. It is the breaking of the rules that creates the imagery desired. Anomaly occurs in many ways in language. It may involve contradictory semantic properties, nonsense words, violation of semantic rules, and so on. The fact that we are able to understand or at least interpret anomalous expressions and at the same time reorganize their anomalous nature demonstrates our knowledge of the semantic system and semantic properties of the language. We have to decide, we have to identify, we have to point out the anomaly in the language, and that means that we have knowledge of that certain language. So that is what anomaly is. The next thing, metaphor. Our doubts are traitors. Shakespeare says, our doubts misguide us. They are the traitors. Walls have ears. It was said by Cervantes. Walls have ears. How is it possible that walls have a human characteristic? It is called as metaphor. The night has 1,000 eyes and the day but one. The night, since you don't know how many people are there outside, or you can't see, therefore it has 1,000 eyes. But the day, when you can see everything, there is only one eye that you can see. Because in night, you can see through your mind, you can see through your ear, you can see through your body, touch. All these senses, they are acting as eyes. You are creating images. But in day, there are only the eyes that you have. It was said by Francis William Bourdillon. Anyone who ever sat down to write a term paper on one fascinating but abstract subject, such as the fall of the rupee in 19th century British ruled India, knows how hard it is to find the right words. Often you find yourself using concrete language to describe the abstract events. The use of fall to describe the decline in the value of a monetary unit illustrates this. Language concepts combined with our experience in the world may be stretched to encompass a variety of possibly remotely related concepts. For example, a metaphor is an expression that ordinarily designates one concept, its literal meaning, but is used to designate another concept, thus creating an implicit comparison. Metaphor is an important part of semantics. Without metaphor, our ability to communicate efficiently and effectively would be crippled. Metaphor is an important component of language creativity. Interpreted literally, metaphors may occur anomalous. Walls have ears is certainly anomalous, but it can be interpreted as meaning you can be overheard even when you think nobody is listening. In some sense, the sentence is ambiguous, but the literal meaning is so unlikely that listeners use their imagination for another interpretation. The principle of compositionality is very rubbery, and when it fails to produce an acceptable literal meaning, listeners stretch it. The stretching is based on semantic properties that are inferred or that provide some kind of resemblance. The literal meaning of a sentence such as my new car is a lemon. My new car is a lemon. Probably it might be yellow in color or green in color, or there could be any other meaning that needs to be inferred. It is anomalous. You could, if driven to the wall, another metaphor, provide some literal interpretation that is plausible if given sufficient context. For example, the new car may be a miniature toy carved out of a piece of citrus fruit. The more common meaning, however, would be metaphorical and interpreted as referring to a newly purchased automobile that breaks down and requires constant repairs. The imagination stretching in this case may relate to the semantic property tastes sour that lemon possesses. Metaphors are not necessarily anomalous when taken literally. The literal meaning of the sentence, Dr. Jekyll is a butcher, is that a physician named Jekyll also works as a retailer of knickknacks or a slaughterer of animals used for food. The metaphorical meaning is that the doctor named Jekyll is harmful, possibly murderous, and apt to operate unnecessarily. Similarly, the sentence, John is a snake in the grass, can be interpreted literally to refer to a pet snake on the lawn named John. Metaphorically, the sentence has nothing to do with the scaly, limbless reptile. To interpret metaphors, we need to understand both the literal meaning and facts about the world. To understand the metaphor, time is money. अब ये भी क्या है? It is a metaphor. In order to understand this metaphor, you should have some knowledge of the world or the things going on in the world. It is necessary to know that in our society we are often paid according to the number of hours or days worked. In fact, time, which is an abstract concept, is the subject of multiple metaphors. We save time, waste time, manage time, push things back in time, live on borrowed time, and suffer the ravages of time as the sands of time drift away. Metaphor has a strong cultural component. My car is a lemon may not be understood in a culture that lacks both cars and lemons, like that of the native peoples of northern Greenland. Shakespeare uses metaphors that are lost on many of today's playgoers. I am a man whom fortune hath cruelly scratched, is most effective as a metaphor in a society like Shakespeare's that commonly depicts fortune as a woman. Many expressions now taken literally may have originated as metaphors. Indeed, the once highly metaphorical "my car is a lemon" is becoming more literal as legislatures pass lemon laws and the usage becomes more common. Metaphor is one of the driving forces behind language change. Metaphorical use of language is language creativity at its highest. Nevertheless, the basis of metaphorical use is the ordinary linguistic knowledge about words, their semantic properties, and their combining powers that all speakers possess. So, metaphor is a very important component of a language because it forces different changes needed in the language. Next is idioms. Idioms are those phrases which mean something else but are said in a other specific manner. They need to be understood, and in order to understand idioms, you need to know the language. Knowing a language includes knowing the morphemes, simple words, compound words, and their meanings. In addition, it means knowing fixed phrases consisting of more than one word, with meanings that cannot be inferred from the meanings of the individual words. Here is where the principle of compositionality is superseded by expressions that act very much like individual morphemes in that they are not decomposable but have a fixed meaning that must be learned. The usual semantic rules for combining meanings do not apply. All languages contain many such expressions called idioms or idiomatic phrases, as in these English examples. Sail down the river, haul over the coals, eat my hat, let their hair down, put his foot in his mouth, throw her weight around, snap out of it, cut it out, hit it off, get it off, bite your tongue, give a piece of your mind. All these are idiomatic phrases, idioms, but they actually do not mean what they are communicating. They have an underlying meaning. We have to read between the lines in order to understand the idioms. Idioms are similar in structure to ordinary phrases except that they lend to be frozen in form and do not readily enter into other combinations or allow the word order to change. Thus, आप उनका word order change नहीं कर सकते. You have to read them, you have to understand them, not by the words, but you have to understand the phrase as a whole. She put her foot in her mouth has the same structure as she put her bracelet in her drawer. But it seems awkward putting your foot in your mouth. How pleasing a phrase it is, or how pleasing an action to be imagined it is. The drawer in which she put her bracelet was hers. Her bracelet was put in her drawer. Our sentence is related to sentence number 2. The mouth in which she put her foot was hers. Her foot was put in her mouth. Very ambiguous statement, very confusing. What was the action that was being performed? We don't know. We have to understand it. It is a phrase. Now, what does this phrase mean? We will have to research, we will have to infer. Do not have the idiomatic sense of sentence 1, except perhaps humorously. On the other hand, the words of some idioms can be moved without affecting the idiomatic sense. The FBI kept tabs on radicals. Tabs were kept on radicals by the FBI. Radicals were kept tabs on by the FBI. Idioms can break the rules of combining semantic properties. Semantic properties के जो rules हैं idioms पे वो apply नहीं होते. The object of eat must be usually with the same property, edible. You can't eat your foot. But in here it is had, eat your heart out. This restriction is violated. Idioms often lead to humor. अब idioms में क्या होता है? Humor होता है, मजाक होता है. What did the doctor tell the vegetarian about his surgically implanted heart valve from a pig? That it was okay as long as he did not eat his heart out. Idioms grammatically as well as semantically have special characteristics. Idioms grammatically, semantically, they have special characteristics. They must be entered into the lexicon or mental dictionary. Entered into lexicon. Lexicon होती है language या mental dictionary. As single items with their meanings specified. इनके जो मीनिंग्स होते हैं दे आर स्पेसिफाइड. एक ही मीनिंग होगा और वो अप्लाई होगा इन डिफरेंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट. एंड स्पीकर्स मस्ट लर्न द स्पेशल रिस्ट्रिक्शंस ऑन देयर यूज इन सेंटेंसेस. द स्पीकर शुड नो देयर यूजेज विच इज स्पेसिफिक in a certain sentence. Most idioms originate as metaphorical expressions that establish themselves in the language and become frozen in their form and meaning. अब इनमें क्या होती हैं? कुछ में metaphorical expressions होती हैं जो कि frozen है, जिनका एक ही मीनिंग है and they can't mean something else. After that, we'll discuss what different idioms might mean, the idioms that we just studied as example. The first one, sail down the river, haul over the coals, eat my hat, let their hair down, put his foot in his mouth, put his foot in his mouth, throw her weight around, bite your tongue, give a piece of your mind. Now these are a few idioms that I have picked. I'll tell you how to infer an idiom, कि उसका मतलब हम कैसे समझेंगे. पहला क्या है? Sail down the river. Where do we sell things? We sell things in the market, moving on the earth, ground, road. It is not a river. It is not water all around. So, if you are sailing in the river, it means it is an impossible or difficult task. एक मुश्किल काम है कि आप पानी में जाकर दरिया के अंदर कुछ बेच रहे हैं, जबकि सड़क पे मार्केट में बेचना is quite easy. Haul over the coals. अब coals, what are coals? Coals are hot, burning. Haul over the coals, let's assume it means walking over the coals. It means it is a very difficult situation or some kind of trouble in which you are into. Eat my hat. Hat is not an edible thing. You can't eat it. Eat my hat, it might mean creating disturbance. जैसे हम कहते हैं भी मेरा सर ना खाओ. So eat my hat, it means disturbance is being created by the conversation going on. Let their hair down. To defeat. Because down means downwards. Hair dressed up on the head. And when you are letting your hair down, it means the lock in the hair has been broken. Put his foot in his mouth. Again, if you try it on your own, try to put your foot in your mouth, it won't be possible. Secondly, हम कहते हैं अपने पाँव पर कुल्हाड़ी मारना. Can you do it? Can you harm your own body part? No. It means that putting yourself into trouble. Fine? Next, throw her weight around. वेट को आप कैसे थ्रो कर सकते हैं? वजन को. थ्रो हर वेट अराउंड माइट मीन टू बी प्रेजेंट फिजिकली, कि अपना वजन लेकर आ जाओ, फेंको इधर. बाइट योर टंग. इफ यू बाइट योर टंग,